This is Kim Newlove, host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Thank you for joining me for episode 101. If you're new to the show, welcome. I alternate solo shows and interview shows. The solo shows are about my career change from pharmacist to voice actor. I have been an Ohio licensed pharmacist for 20 years, but I'm no longer in clinical practice. These days, I provide voiceover services and audiobook narration. If you have a project in mind, contact me through my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. I also have an online course called Pronounce Drug Names Like a Pro, which you can find at kimnewlove.com. Hey, pronouncing drug names is tough. If you don't know how to find the right pronunciations and break them down so you can use them with confidence, Pronounce Drug Names Like a Pro is for you. My interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain. Today's episode is an interview with Dr. Allie Butler. I invited her on the podcast to share how she's using her voice to help patients with diabetes, so you can be inspired by her story. A lot of pharmacists are looking for opportunities to make an impact in their patients' lives. Allie is doing just that. Let me tell you a little bit more about my guest, then we'll dive right into our interview. Dr. Allie Butler is a U.S. Air Force veteran, pharmacist, and entrepreneur. The name of her company is Diabetes Battle Buddy. Allie likes to serve others. After her service in the Air Force, she became a pharmacist. For several years, she worked as a community pharmacist and focused on diabetes care. Coming up in our interview, you'll hear Allie talk about why diabetes became an area of interest and a personal reason that she knows what individuals with diabetes need. Allie is passionate about diabetes management, supporting veterans, and leadership development in healthcare professionals. In her free time, she enjoys cycling, cooking, gardening, and spending time with her husband and 3 children. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Allie Butler. Hi, Allie. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you on the podcast. I've been wanting to interview you for a while. You have been a part of my life for a little over a year. You've been an accountability partner of sorts. I was developing my online course last year, and you developed an online course this year. And I'd like to have you talk a little bit about how you use your voice as a pharmacist and as the founder of Diabetes Battle Buddy. So first, if you don't mind, you have an interesting path into pharmacy, and I would love it if you would start off telling me how you got into pharmacy and a little bit about how you use your voice as a pharmacist.
Sure. So I actually did not start out in pharmacy. I was a meteorologist for the Air Force prior to this career change. So I went in straight out of college as an officer, served in the Air Force for about 4 years, did a lot of leadership studies. My husband is also military, and we were not able to be based together. So because of the career clash, someone had to get out, and he had the longer commitment. So it kind of just made sense for me to be the one to make that exit. And I knew that I wanted to continue working and serving in some format. And that's kind of what led me into healthcare. I've always been interested in learning about the body and health and wellness. So when I was kind of thinking about what would be flexible and could accommodate a military lifestyle, pharmacy kind of fit the bill. And I applied to one pharmacy school and got in luckily. And that, the rest is history in that regard as to kind of how I made that transition. And then I've just kind of been working my way into a new space. I did start out traditionally in a community setting. So I worked for Walmart for a few years, did a lot of management in that role, was able to see a lot of what is needed in kind of healthcare, where the gaps are. And it kind of led me down this path that I'm on now, which has been really fun and exciting. Basically in that diabetes space, obviously from the name of the business, Diabetes Battle Buddy, to kind of fill in the gaps. I think you're probably somewhat familiar from when you worked behind that counter, how many people would come up and ask for some sort of support, whether it be how to use their meter or some sort of nutritional guidance. And as you know, you're not always allocated the kind of time to be able to properly support that population. So it's something that really kind of hit home with me. And that's kind of how I have veered off into this direction to kind of fill some of those gaps, to help address not only the, like using meter and nutrition, maybe some of the emotional aspects of getting a diagnosis and, supporting someone as they kind of make that journey into wellness. So that's kind of where our Diabetes Battle Buddy comes in. We have coursework that they can kind of sit down and do self-paced. We've got one-on-one guidance to help them with whatever they're looking for, if it's nutrition or fitness, whatever it be. So, yep, that's where we are right now with that.
Very good. How'd you decide that you had a passion for diabetes in particular?
So I think that it's one of those things. I think when you're in school, everyone kind of has an area that they excel in and maybe don't excel in. Like when I think about the things that I was not very good at, like cancer related drugs was a downfall for me. But diabetes just made sense. It's something that I really enjoyed supporting people on. I've always been kind of passionate about the nutrition and fitness. And then in my last pregnancy with my twins, I ended up getting a gestational diabetes diagnosis. So I was able to see firsthand what that support system looks like, kind of the approach that they take. It's very I don't know if one-sided is the right word, but it's not conducive to all learning styles, right? And it's very fast-paced. So having had a background in diabetes, we get a decent amount of exposure to it in school and then in practice. It was still a lot of information to take in. So trying to think about someone who maybe doesn't have that background, getting that kind of information given to them as quickly as it's given, I knew that there needs to be a larger support network for not just gestational diabetes, but diabetes in general, because diabetes education is extensive. There is a lot of information to learn, and they just need a lot of support. It's an entire lifestyle change, and it lasts for a lifetime, right? So
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what led to this passion that I have. Just, I guess, that personal experience on top of something that I already enjoyed kind of supporting people with.
Now, how did you come up with the name of your company? I noticed that you've got that Air Force background and you have an interest in diabetes. So is that how you came up with the name Diabetes Battle Buddy? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So when I was kind of thinking about where I wanted to kind of hone in, initially I was doing some research and I actually came upon some interesting facts that I think I may have mentioned to you before, but the rate of diabetes in a veteran population is actually much higher than the regular population. So in the US, it's about 10% of the population that has diabetes, but in the veteran space, it's 25%, which is a drastic increase. So I think when I was originally diving into this, that's kind of the thought that was on my mind. And when I started kind of analyzing what might lead to some of those statistics, I kind of, and of course, this is not data supported, but these are just kind of thoughts. A lot of it's probably related to mental health, right? Veterans tend to have a lot of mental health issues. Mental health issues often lead to weight gain and obesity, and whether it be from the actual condition or the medications. And then what does that lead to? Sometimes that leads to diabetes. So, making that realization, that's kind of what developed this idea that you need to have like a whole support system. So a battle buddy in the military is someone that you kind of go through the trenches with, you train with, you do your missions with, you've got their back, you're not going to leave them behind, right? So that's the premise behind a battle buddy. And that's what we're trying to do at Diabetes Battle Buddy, is help not just veterans, but really anyone, kind of pull them through the trenches with this condition that can be pretty overwhelming. So, and that's community from not only like the coaching end, but also connecting them with other people that also have the condition, because it's kind of like, as you said, an accountability partner. We're usually much better at what we do when we have someone else either doing it with us or supporting us along the way.
Well, if anybody knows me, they know that I'm obsessed with Donald Miller's book, Story Brand. And in Story Brand, he talks about having a guide with a plan. You talked about having an accountability partner. That is a little bit different. You actually, as the practitioner, are the guide with the plan. You can teach somebody about nutrition, exercise, medications, and so on. And an accountability partner is just a little bit different, more like a peer. But no matter how the patient looks at you, if they can move forward and succeed in controlling their diabetes and maintaining their health and having a long, healthy life because of you, who cares if it's called an accountability partner or a guide?
Right.
Either way, I think they're lucky to have you. And I like the theme that you've got going on there because it's personal and you have a passion about diabetes. So this personal story about your previous U.S. Air Force service, and then, the passion about diabetes. I love the name of the company. And for anybody that's listening to this that hasn't seen the logo, you got to see the logo. Allie, tell me about the logo for your company. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you were actually probably one of the first people to see my logo before I made the final decision on what it was going to look like. It is essentially a mountain, and it's two people climbing up the mountain, but one of them is pulling the other one up. And I think that that totally encompasses exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Can you do it alone? Yes, you can, but it's much harder. So this is us essentially extending that hand to help pull people towards the top of that mountain. And that's what that logo essentially represents. I love the logo. To me, it's like a perfect description of exactly what we're trying to do.
Oh, I like it too. I think it's very visually representative of what you're trying to do. You're trying to help somebody. And I like your passion and your purpose, but I also want to talk a little bit about the features of the company. So you're working full-time as a pharmacist, which is amazing, but then you've also got Diabetes Battle Buddy on the side as your entrepreneurial passion. Can you tell me a little bit about what services you offer at this time and what direction you're going with this company?
Sure. So we offer one-on-one support services. And that, like I said, is from nutrition to fitness to kind of like analyzing your habits, whatever it might be. We also have recently just released a course that's geared towards gestational diabetes. So this is just a quick tutorial on basically everything that you need to know so that you can then take that information into your sessions, because you should still see your doctor for follow-up and the specialist, whether it be gestational or regular or any type 2 or type 1 diabetes. This information is essentially something that can give you the background that you need so that you know the questions that you need to ask when you get into those appointments, and so that you can get into a deeper level of support with the limited time that you have. So we just released that course for gestational diabetes. We're also prepping a similar course for type 2 diabetes. And each of the courses are probably about somewhere between 2 to 3 hours in length. And it's self-paced. You can stop and go at your leisure. So it's not something you have to sit and do all at once. And then it gives you all that background. It tells you what is the disease, what causes the disease, what preventative measures you can take if you're looking at it from like a preventative standpoint. It talks about nutrition. It talks about using your meter or your medications. If you're injecting insulin, we go through how to do that. So we do all of those types of things in the courses, which we can also do one-on-one. But I find that people sometimes like to be in the privacy of their own home and kind of go through that information and digest, because there's a little bit of fear associated with like opening yourself up for this like tutorial with someone directly, right? There can be a little bit of intimidation, like you don't know what you're doing or you don't know what you're talking about and you're afraid to ask questions. So that's kind of the thought behind these courses. And really the intent is for them to take the coursework and then ideally they would line up with one of our coaches and then kind of start going from there, right? So that's kind of like our newest thing that we've done. We also offer or business support for like if you want a wellness briefing, or I guess briefing is a military term. If you want a wellness presentation to talk to your employees about like appropriate nutrition or various types of exercise or how much they should be exercising, anything that you're trying to do, we can also support that. We can come out or do it via Zoom, whatever it might be.
Well, I think you've got some great services that you offer. The online courses, you hit the nail on the head when you said people can be intimidated by the topic and they prefer to learn about some of these sensitive topics in the privacy of their own home. And they need somebody they can trust that they can listen to, because Dr. Google is maybe not the best person, right? I mean, what is your experience as a pharmacist and as the founder of this company? What do people come to you with their preconceived notions or their research that they do on Google compared to what you talk to them about? Can you give me some stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a difficult thing because there is a lot of really valuable information on the internet. But as you recall, we had an entire course on how to evaluate literature and to understand whether it is if that evidence is supported in a way that makes sense, not just statistically, but also clinically. So there are a lot of things that people don't realize. Like anyone can pull up an article and read through it just pick and choose what they want. But that's not what you should be doing in healthcare. You need to know and understand how to evaluate that literature so that you're not using bias to support whatever it is that you're trying to support. And I'm sure anyone in healthcare has been exposed to this, where someone comes in and they'll say they pulled up literature, even not just necessarily a blog. Blogs are like, that's a whole nother level of not always supported information, but they'll pull up literature and they think like, hey, I've done the research, but they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to properly evaluate it to make sure that what they're actually saying is accurate and supportive of the claim, right? So yeah, I mean, all sorts of stuff. A lot of it in like the herbal realm, a lot of it in the herbal realm, lots of OTC questions, a lot of things with vaccinations, lots and lots of vaccination type stories and whatnot.
Allie, let me ask you about your board certification. Tell me what it's in and how it helps you both as a pharmacist and as the founder of the Diabetes Battle Buddy company.
Sure. So my board certification is in medication therapy management, which short is MTM. Probably a lot of pharmacists and healthcare providers at this point are somewhat familiar with what that is. But for those who may not work in healthcare, essentially what that means is you have a certification in something that helps you assess and support people with their medication therapy, right? So you're helping them manage all of their medications. So in like a traditional sense, MTM from, let's say, a pharmacy standpoint would kind of be the process where a pharmacist goes and looks at a patient's complete profile along with their medications and diagnoses. They essentially evaluate to see if there are any gaps in care. So, is there another type of medication that they should be on? They evaluate to see if the medications that they are on are the most appropriate given either other medications or conditions that they have. And then they assess to see if they're being taken properly and also to see if there might be unwanted side effects that either are impacting quality of life or actually impacting the way that they're taking it. So, because obviously that's going to have a potentially negative outcome on whatever disease state they're treating. So that's kind of the background behind what medication therapy management is. And in like the overall pharmacy realm, that allows you to kind of help support your patients in a way that maybe their healthcare provider in their primary care cannot, because usually those appointments are for assessing the actual condition and diagnosing and then maybe prescribing the medications. But a lot of times there isn't time to go that extra step where they're making sure that they're taking it properly, understanding what they're using it for. And those things are really important. So in that traditional pharmacy realm, that just allows us to kind of up our support aspect to really make us more valuable and to help us solidify those relationships with our patients. A lot of times people will do what they call like a comprehensive medication review. They'll actually have the opportunity to sit down with a patient and go over every single one of the medications. This is something that insurance will reimburse for. There are actually a lot of people that are doing these services like an entrepreneurial path, and they open up companies and essentially offer these services to like maybe independent pharmacies. There's also MTM in a provider setting. So if you have like a provider status or you're in a clinic, there's a different type of MTM that you can do for that. So it's really just another layer that's added into the healthcare system to make it a little bit more whole person approach when it comes to getting people supported with their conditions and their medications. So obviously it fits into a pharmacist role. With Diabetes Battle Buddy, it's really not much different in the role that it plays, because whenever I'm sitting down with someone and going through that support piece, I look at all of their medications. Obviously, I'm focused on diabetes medications, but I look at all of them because a lot of those medications can impact the way that your diabetes is supported. So it just gives me a little bit extra focus and knowledge to adequately and comfortably give that support. I think probably a lot of pharmacists, after they've been out of pharmacy school for a certain amount of time, maybe become a little rusty in the actual deeper part of some of the medications. And it's just a great refresher. I actually highly recommend people to go and look into the board certification if they're in that community setting. It just kind of re-exposes you to a lot of things that maybe you forgot. It also goes over a lot of the new medications that are out that we maybe don't always have time to review, like when we're working behind the counter. So it's a great certification. I think there are a couple different things that there's like a board certification, and there might be some other program that is MTM specific. But definitely, if you're going to keep working in that community setting, I highly recommend it.
I think APHA has a certificate training program. That might be what you're talking about. And I have that one.
Yes, that is it. Yes, exactly. I just think it's valuable. I mean, as providers, we should always be studying up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a board certification makes you do that. It's your accountability partner.
Yes. And you have to renew it,
Yeah.
right? You can't have the certification unless you renew it. Is it every 5 years? I forget.
5 years.
And
yes.
You've
Yes.
been out of school for 6 years now. At what point did you get that certification?
I think that was a year and a half ago. So, a little before my 5-year mark, but I think and that was like the perfect time, I think I was far enough away from school for it to be beneficial. Like maybe as far as knowledge base, I don't necessarily think a new graduate will benefit from it the same way that someone who's been out a little bit longer
That's
would.
a good point. Yeah, it's a great review and
Yeah.
good CE too,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes. I actually probably did qualify for CE, but I didn't even look into it. It probably did. I probably did extra CE on top of it. Extra lots of CE that year.
Hey, if you don't need it, you don't need it. We all track our CE. Everybody's got their requirements. We
Yes.
have to renew our licenses.
Yes,
Yeah, I
definitely.
think it's great that you have that certification, though. And I can only imagine that with your side hustle here, the Diabetes Battle Buddy, that you are able to use that knowledge even more. You have more time. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Obviously, in that traditional community setting, it's very fast paced. You don't necessarily get that devoted one on one time that you would like to have. And depending on the company that you work for, that component may not even be something that you're executing to a full extent. Like a lot of times, they'll centralize the MTM services in some of the bigger companies. So you don't necessarily get to do that at like the storefront. But yes, in with Diabetes Battle Buddy, it's like at the forefront when we start going over that medication component, because obviously that's part of what we do is evaluate and make sure that it makes sense.
I love that you're putting that knowledge to use. That's great. I think it's a great certification for somebody who's doing medication reviews for a specific population. And I can only imagine how in depth you've gotten by concentrating on the diabetes drugs in general. So you're probably very familiar with absolutely all the diabetes medications, not just the ones that you're dispensing, from day to day.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously diabetes impacts a huge portion of the population, so there's a lot of funding that goes into the research to not only develop new medications, but also some of the devices that are continuing to come out. Like it's when I think back to like 5 years ago, it's amazing how far we've come with diabetes support in just 5 years. Like there was no continuous glucose monitor 5 years ago. And for those who don't know, so traditionally, people, when they test their blood sugars, use a meter, which they prick their finger and get the blood out of their finger and test maybe, it could range maybe once a day, but all the way up to 10 times a day. For type 1 diabetes, they test quite often. So this continuous glucose monitor, which came out in the past couple years, is essentially something that they attach to their body, usually the back of their arm, and they just do one every 14 days. So one prick every 14 days versus potentially 10 pricks a day, which is amazing. So it's been really exciting to see all these new things that they're coming out with. I've seen research now into watches to do blood sugar testing, so something that's not invasive. I don't know if that will actually end up working out, but it would be pretty amazing if it did, because there are a lot of people with needle fear. They don't want to test their blood sugars because they're afraid of needles. So and while the Lancet isn't necessarily a needle, it's got a little bit of a prick, and people will avoid testing because of it. So if we can come up with something that's not invasive, that would be just such a game changer.
You're
So,
talking
yeah.
about the Lancet stick, and I got to tell you, I have donated gallons of blood, 6 gallons or more at this point. And the stick that they do to test your hemoglobin is the worst part of donating blood. So I hear you on that. Allie, can you tell me, how do your clients find you?
Yes. So I am kind of in multiple spaces right now. I have a presence on Facebook. I've got a presence on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. So from a, I guess, social media standpoint, that's kind of covering various populations. So I find my clients through some of those avenues. And then more often than not, it's like someone that knows about my services that passes along my information. So friends and family will refer someone to me. And that's kind of probably been where the majority of my people have come from. And it's just like word of mouth. You can probably speak to that kind of thing. Like when you ask for a recommendation, you're going to trust your friends and your family and probably go with that versus like doing some random search on the internet to find something, especially when it comes to your health. So that's probably where the majority of my clients have come from at this point.
Yeah, I prefer to go with somebody that I know, like, and trust rather than a stranger, but I have to vet everybody and make sure that they know what they're talking about and all that good stuff. And once your clients find you, are they ongoing or is it a one-time visit? I mean, what's the client experience like, Allie?
So it really depends. It's a little bit variable. Some people may just do one session to kind of get themselves in gear and get some of that background information that they're wanting. Some people will do much longer support program. And then, really, the idea behind Diabetes Battle Buddy is that they join that community. So whether it be getting them onto Facebook on our page or into one of our groups where they can like continually participate, it's not necessarily all paid. Some of these things are just free, like a free community to, again, kind of hold people accountable. I know we keep talking about accountability, but when it comes to something like diabetes, it really is that important.
Are you saying that you have a free Facebook group for Diabetes Battle Buddy?
Oh, yeah, I definitely have a free Facebook group for Diabetes Battle Buddy.
Awesome. Well, anybody listening, I will put a link to that in the show notes so you can check that out. I think that's great because that's where your audience goes and they talk to you, of course, interact with you about what their problems are. But then when they interact with one another, you can find out what are they talking about. And then you can add that to your course, or you can make sure to ask somebody about it in an individualized one-on-one consultation. That's gold right there. Good for you, Allie. That's great.
Yep.
If somebody wants to work with you, how do they find you?
So, probably the easiest way would be to do a quick Google search for Diabetes Battle Buddy. We, like I said, are in multiple spaces. We've got a website. If you go to www.diabetesbattlebuddy.com, there are multiple options on there. It has some of our coursework. It also has links to get in touch with us to set up a consultation. Our Facebook group and page, if you do a quick search, you can get there that way. You can follow us on Instagram. It's all Diabetes Battle Buddy. We have we've claimed all of those spaces with our name. So if that's who you're following, then it's us. Okay. So no worries in that regard.
Awesome. I'll put all those links in the show notes so everybody can connect with you and check out what you're posting. Is there anything else you'd like to share as we wrap this up?
No, I'm just really appreciative that you took the time out to talk with me and kind of dig into what I'm doing with this Diabetes Battle Buddy. It's obviously something that I really am passionate about. I think that there's a huge need, and I'm really hoping that we can kind of fill this gap to help get people on track. It's just such a needed thing, and I'm hoping that we can be that support that people are looking for.
Very good. And if you could make this your main hustle instead of your side hustle, would you do it?
Potentially. I mean, I really enjoy the role that I'm in right now, and the company that I'm working for. It's such a great company. It would, it, I, yeah, it potentially. It's just one of those things that, sometimes there's a little bit of fear in walking away from something that you also enjoy to do something that's a little bit unknown, right? But I would say probably my desire to support that diabetes population is probably a little stronger. So I probably would take that opportunity if I got there at that point.
Well, I might just have to check in with you a year from now and see what's going on. Well, Allie, thank you so much for being on the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I appreciate your time and sharing your story with other pharmacists and my listeners. And I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. I've so enjoyed being part of your podcast today.
Here are a few takeaways from this episode. Just like she heard the call to serve her country, Dr. Allie Butler heard the call to serve patients with diabetes by providing education and support. Patients need pharmacists like Allie to fill gaps in care and provide structured support, especially those with a new diagnosis of diabetes. Allie created a business doing what she loves, what the world needs, what she's good at, and what she can get paid to do, all while working full-time and being a supportive wife and devoted mom. She's an amazing woman. On a personal note, Dr. Allie Butler is special to me. Here's a little backstory for you. As you heard in the beginning of the episode, when I was developing my online course last summer, it's called Pronounce Drug Names Like a Pro, Allie was there for me as an accountability partner. What does that mean? She checked up on me while I was creating my course and gave me feedback. She kept it real with me too, and I really appreciate that. I would ask things like, how does the intro video to this module sound? Or does this animation look like it makes sense? Stuff like that. She was there for me, and I appreciated it. When she developed her online course, Allie let me repay the favor in her own way too. I gave her feedback and checked up on her. It was a good accountability partner relationship. I benefited, she benefited, and we both got our online courses made. Let's wrap this up. You can find links to the Diabetes Battle Buddy website, Facebook group, and other social media links in the show notes on your favorite app or on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. And one last thing. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. Take a screenshot and post it to social media or send a link to a friend. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.